Tonight, Superman flips from boring to snarky faster than a speeding bullet. Kyle Rayner shows us that the real miracle of life is friendship. And if you thought that I was gushing over iVampire before, boy, you've seen nothing yet. All that and more this week on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 30 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and we got a big episode finally. It took 30 weeks all the way to March 28th, but we finally have the first crossover of the New 52 and I'm really excited for it because one of the books is possibly one of my favorite books of the New 52 so far. We have the first crossover, Rise of the Vampires, a 4-part crossover. It's going to be continuing into next month, but it involves Justice League Dark, which is a perfectly okay book, and iVampire, which is chez magnifique. And I cannot wait to start talking about it. But before I do, let me tell you all the books that came out this week from DC. So March 28th, 2012 had 14 comics, and they are the number 7 issues of Justice League Dark, iVampire, Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Green Lantern New Guardians, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Blackhawks, Voodoo, Teen Titans, and the number 6 issue, aka the finale of Legion, Secret Origin. Gotta tell you, I'm loving the week. First crossover and the Legion book gets to end. I could not be more grateful. That Legion book actually isn't the worst, but it's ending, so it's just a little bit less Legion in my life, so I'm happy for that. But regardless, let's remove the negativity, start up the positivity, and get into our very first crossover. Justice League Dark number 7, written by Peter Milligan, art by Admira, Wijaya, and Daniel Sampere. Left off last issue with Madame Xanadu seeing a glimpse of Andrew Bennett dying from iVampire and Cain, the evil vampire of biblical lore, coming back to life. And this is part 1 of the Rise of the Vampires crossover series. So this issue picks up with Xanadu basically telling the team, yep, Andrew Bennett is dead and something's awoken. And Constantine says, I met Andrew Bennett once. He was kind of a dick, so I'm kind of glad he's dead. I'm out. Goodbye. Not going to deal with vampires. Xanadu has Zatanna stop him and keep him in place, and he's like, fine, all right, but let it be noted, vampires suck. So they teleport via Shade's M-Vest into Gotham, and as they arrive, the city is just on fire. It is a hell zone. And when they arrive, they take a look around, and they see through all the flames a significant amount of bats, because, that's just Gotham. But they also see vampires standing within them. And everyone kind of takes it in stride, but Shade is losing it a little bit. He's like, oh my god, vampires are real. What? Huh? So as he's just trying to come to grips with it, they realize they didn't exactly teleport into the safest location, so he teleports them up more safely on top of a rooftop as he just tries to mentally get his shit together. The rest of the team is looking down on the ground and see a car being trapped. A couple is arguing about taking this route as a vampire busts through the window and grabs the wife. And as it does so, Batgirl comes in and starts trying to beat up the vampires, but she is very quickly overwhelmed. And as one goes to bite her, a dead man jumps into its body and immediately starts yelping in pain. Neither Batgirl nor the surrounding vampires have any idea what happened, but as dead man pops out of the vampire's body, he's like, oh my god, it's so freaking cold in there. And he drops the vampire onto like a metal pointed fence, and Constantine just casually pulls out an axe and chops its head off, and it's just like, there's probably a lot of ways to kill these vampires, but this is by far the most fun. So Batgirl and Constantine just go through taking out the vampires. Constantine's actually killing them, whereas Batgirl's just doing some kicks and stuff. And Batgirl's like, oh, you're Zatanna's team. Batman warned me about you guys. And he's like, oh, cool. Glad we're Zatanna's team. Meanwhile, we cut over to Shade, and he is still, he's losing control over his M-Vest because he just is kind of not there right now. Meanwhile, they look out over this horde, and Xanadu tells Zatanna, hey, could you like stop them from coming after us? So she uses her magic, but it isn't quite working. It's like falling a little flat, and one of the vampires almost gets through, but Constantine throws the axe and chops off its head. And Xanadu's like, huh, your magic is failing. That's weird. And Batgirl just comes up to him and tells him, I'm needed on the other side of town. You guys don't seem like you're firing on all cylinders right now, so maybe you should leave before things get too hectic. So Constantine draws up a protection circle in the middle of the street, and basically is just like, you're forcing me to be here. I'm going to stand in the middle of this thing until all this is over. And as he goes to stand in it, the circle disappears. And he blames Xanadu briefly, but she's like, no, that ain't me. This is my vision. This is how things end. So we see a few blocks away, Kane is giving a talk to his vampire army, how the world is theirs to claim, and he's becoming stronger every second. Rooftop above, we see, I believe it's John or Will, whatever, the people from iVampire, along with Batman, fighting off the horde. And explaining basically the events of iVampire number 6, of how Tig, the little kid, chopped off Andrew Bennett's head thinking that it would kill all of the vampires that he created, which would have been the big bad of that series. So we cut back over to the main team, the Justice League Dark, and Xanadu's like, okay, here's the deal. I believe that Kane is draining the magical energy from around us, and therefore we're going to be losing our powers very quickly. So I need to go get some help. Boston and Constantine, you guys need to go to the land of the dead and get Andrew Bennett back. I'm going to go do my own thing. Bye. And she just spirit projects herself out of there, leaving her body behind. So Boston and Constantine are like, okay, all right, here's the thing. I'm not going to do that, or at least Constantine isn't, because Andrew Bennett sucks, and he's kind of glad he's dead. Meanwhile, Boston like goads him on, be like, you know what? I bet you don't even have the ability to get over to the land of the dead with your magic powers gone. And he's like, oh, is that so? All right, I'll show you. Shade finally gets a grip on himself long enough to teleport Xanadu, Zatanna, and himself out of there. And they teleport up to the rooftop where Batman, I'm going to say William, and Tig are. And basically they're just reinforcements trying to help in the fight. So Constantine pulls out a bottle of whiskey and a dead rat, and he somehow turns that into a portal to the realm of the dead. And while both of them are very hesitant to step through the portal, they do end up doing so because it's necessary to save the world. So they go through, and we'll see what happens next time. However, we see where Madame Xanadu went, which was the astral zone of the Crystal One. And the Crystal One is, as far as I can tell, a big blue bearded baby made of crystal. And Xanadu's like, here's the deal. I made the Dark Team, and I tried to avoid a day like this. I really tried, but I need help from something higher, so can you please help me? And the Crystal One's like, are you sure about this? Like, your team's going to hate you for doing this. And she's like, yeah, I know. And that's where the issue ends. This issue is mostly just setting up the pieces. It's getting everything where it needs to be. It has them going to the dead zone. It has Zatanna and Shade on the side of the iVampire team. It has Xanadu doing her own thing. It's just getting everything where it needs to be. So it's not exactly the most impactful issue, but I'm definitely loving the kind of tone they got here. I do wish that this followed more of the iVampire art, which is Andrea Sorrentino. It's fantastic art and really fits the mood. This is fine. It also is two artists. They blend together pretty well. I couldn't really tell where the gap was if you just showed me the pages, but it's not quite the Mikel Janin art of the first arc, and it's not the Andrea Sorrentino, so I gotta knock it off a little bit for that. But overall, I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 7.5. I think it's a very good start to the event as a whole, and I am, of course, looking forward to part 2, which luckily came out the same week in iVampire number 7, so look forward to that. And I'm just down with the event. It's a solid start to a very solid story. iVampire number 7, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov and Andrea Sorrentino on art. This is part 2 of the Rise of the Vampires crossover, and last issue in this crossover was Justice League Dark number 7, where basically you don't really need to have read that much of it. It's pretty much, this is standalone, but the most is that the Justice League Dark showed up in Gotham because of their own visions and such like that. And of course, last issue in iVampire, Andrew Bennett was killed, and Kane, the original vampire, was summoned from the dead world. So this issue picks up with just a nothingness, just an inky white void, and Andrew Bennett is there, and he's talking to some ethereal voice that basically says, hey, Andrew, you're nothing. You are nowhere. This is nothing. And Andrew's like, okay, so why am I something? He's like, you're not. You're nothing, but you're here. Then we come back to Earth real quick because just had to set that up. And we see how Kane is awake, and he is now controlling all of the vampires except for Mary, who, of course, has her own power set. And immediately, John, Tig, and Batman are like, okay, we need to leave now. So they just grapple out through a window and just, they're gone. And Kane sends out all the vampires to go after them. Meanwhile, Mary takes offense to that. She's like, hey, I'm the one running this show. You're just, I don't care who you are. You're some just pasty-ass old guy. I'm the one who's like running this army. And Kane just reaches up, grabs her by the throat, and says like, I am the source of all vampirism. I am literally the taproot. I have no use for you. And she's like, hey, if you want to know about this modern world, you're going to need someone like me. And then he just electrocutes her and causes her intense pain. Meanwhile, in the in-between, Andrew's still talking to the Void. And basically, because he was already dead, being a vampire, when he died, he didn't get to go. He wasn't killed. He was just removed from the board. So he's not going to heaven or hell or anything else because he still needed to do something. And he keeps on asking this voice who it is. Meanwhile, the voice explains the history of Kane, where Kane was, before there was light or dark, heaven or earth, anything like that, there was a blackness that took the form of a man named Cain, biblical Cain. He was cast out by God. He found another woman who was also cast out by God. He drank of her blood, and therefore they became the first vampire thing. So they had more vampire children. They did all this, and because he was just this primordial evil, he could bend the rules of just reality to his will. He could do whatever he wants. Finally, he was locked in a prison, back by an army of great mystical warriors that kind of looks like demon knights, but we're not there yet, so I don't know. Meanwhile, apparently the lock on this prison was one of his children, his direct descendants, managed to maintain part of their humanity. And as long as that was alive, he would stay locked up. And that person was, of course, Andrew Bennett. So Andrew hears all this and he's like, I can't go back. So then we cut to back then. Justice League Dark is teleported in on top of the rooftop where Batman, Tig, and John are fighting. And they help out just kind of removing the horde as best they can, but the vampires just keep coming over and over again. Down below, we see Mary is going through the entire horde, just being like, hey, guys, does nobody want to follow the plan anymore? Where we take over the world, but we're smart about it and not just be mindless monsters. No, hey, listen to me. And as she tries to do so, she's like, man, I lost my hold on all of them. That sucks. So we go up to the rooftop. Batman is contacting his team the whole time. He loses contact with Robin briefly, and he's like, okay, here's the deal. You guys literally caused this mess. Actually super caused this mess. So I'm going to leave you guys with the Justice League Dark and go take care of my own team stuff. And Tig's like, you're just leaving us to die? And Sam's like, hey, we're Justice League Dark. And he's like, you're just leaving us to die? So she talks to John and is like, well, we may as well go out in style. So they keep on going. They're lopping off heads and such. But even now, the lopping off heads isn't working. They're just regenerating. And they're just hoping to need some sort of miracle to live through this. And wouldn't you know it, Mary shows up. And she's like, hey, I could lend a hand. So then we cut back to Andrew. And he sees all of this from the nothing. And he's like, all of my friends are in danger because I put them there. And he's like, no, you didn't put them there. You just did not act. You refused the call of what you needed to do. And this is your destiny. And Andrew's like, destiny's for teenage girls. I'm just a monster of death. And he's like, no, Cain is death. Cain is a monster. He's reborn because of your mistakes. You're the only one who can put him down. So we cut back to Mary, and Mary just goes full ham on all these guys, on all the vampires, transforms into like her wolf beast form, and just says, all right, come to mommy. This is what happens when you misbehave. Starts ripping off heads. Tig is like, okay, maybe she's the next one that we should cut the head off of, because she's kind of freaking me out. And Mary's just going on about like, oh, Kane thinks he can just take my place. That son of a bitch. But she gets through and says like, okay, we need to get to him before she manages to. And then Kane, of course, manages to do the thing. He reaches like full power. And Zatanna's looking over the side of the building and just sees this massive like ball of magic energy that Kane is inside of. And as it grows and starts expanding over Gotham, he removes all the vampires' weaknesses and they begin their rule of the world. And Mary's like, you know what? I thought I would like the end of the world, thought I might hook up with Batman, but now I've got some primordial evil taking my army, a bunch of mystical morons around me, and Andrew's boyfriend and the stupid kid are the only ones keeping me company. This sucks. And that's where the issue ends, of things go from bad to worse. This was great. Like, the art is fantastic the whole way through. I really like the conversations Andrew is having. The visual, just the sequence of Kane's origin is worth price of admission on its own, because it's just this different style, but it's like old medieval looking. It's so good. I love this page in general. I mean, it's straight up, it's an 8.5 for me. The only thing that's dragging it down right now is that I kind of skipped over the bits where they are focusing, this and part one, a lot on like the Bat family. And I understand this takes place in Gotham, but I don't know. I kind of wish that it would just stick to the Justice League Dark and the Eye Vampire people. Yes, you can have Batman there, but like the last page of this specifically shows Catwoman, Robin, Nightwing, and Batgirl. And I don't know. It feels a little bit cheap of just like, hey, they're here too. Remember, we're in Gotham, and you buy Bat books, don't you? So that's the only critique I really have on it. But the rest of it, loving it. And very much looking forward to parts 3 and 4, which are coming out next month's issues of Justice League Dark Knight Vampire number 8. So hope you'll tag along to there. Batman The Dark Knight number 7, written by Paul Jenkins and David Finch, art by David Finch as well. Last issue left off with Batman finding out Bane was the primary guy, and he's stronger and faster and smarter now with his new Venom thing. So yeah. So this issue picks up, fights continuing, and Batman continues to have his ass handed to him. Bane picks up a boulder, drops it onto Batman. End of story. No. So Bane looks underneath it after he drops it, finds out Batman managed to escape, and he's like, well, it's only a matter of time, Batman. I'll find you. Meanwhile, Batman is headed up the mountain to Bane's military bunker, it looks like, and he's like, all right, I got about 5 minutes until Bane finds out where I am, so I got to figure out what to do here. He heads into the bunker and immediately tries to clear it out of any innocent people, but, of course, inside is Poison Ivy, who, if you remember, like, 4 issues ago was kind of a focus of this thing. And he goes and he talks to Ivy, and he's like, hey, all right, I'm going to get you out of here because you got to go back and be in the Birds of Prey book. Also, in this book, she's green, and in that book, she's human-colored. So, a little bit of continuity there, but regardless, they discuss, like, okay, so Bane, what's up? Can I beat him? And Poison Ivy's like, well, he's got an antidote. It's made out of, like, some certain cactus thing. He's like, yeah, I've already got the cactus things. He's like, great. Basically, the only way it's going to work is if you get him to eat it. So, good luck with that. And she's like, all right, cool. So then Batman goes up on top of a lighthouse next to the bunker as Bane's still just tromping around. And he's like, hey, Bane, I know you're afraid of me because you're trying to stop me. So, na-na-na-na-na. And then Bane just jumps up to the top of the lighthouse and starts wrecking Batman. And it's just another, like every issue, it's just another one of these conversations about what is fear really? Oh, it is Bane. Bane is fear. He is Batman's truest fear, that he is stronger and can be beaten or whatever. And Batman puts up a little bit of a fight and does burn off the bottom of Bane's mask, but doesn't seem to do anything to slow him down. Speaking of slowing down, Superman's still with the Flash, who is starting to basically give out. He's like, I have been running at supersonic speeds for over a day, Superman. I'm gonna pass out now. And Superman's like, no, Flash, you gotta push through it. And he's like, I can't. And he falls down. And Superman's like, all right, cool, you did it. The toxin couldn't get a foothold in your metabolism. Good job, you did it. And Flash is like, all right, I got to get back to Batman. He needs my help. And Superman's like, dude, you need a hospital. And he's like, no, this is Batman's book. So he runs off back to Batman. Meanwhile, Bane is just still continuing his speech. Fear is a monster. It is the man who bested you. Admit that you fear me. And Batman's inner narration is just like, yeah, okay, I admit it. I fear him. He's stronger than me. But you know what? Doesn't matter, because there's one thing I fear more, and that's failure. And he pulls out the antidote, and he drops it. And seemingly all hope is lost. And then Flash swings by, grabs the antidote before it hits the ground, and says, hey, Batman, did you drop this? And then Batman slams it into Bane's open mouth. And Bane starts freaking out, and he's like, oh, how could this happen? I'm stronger than you. And Batman goes, no, you're not. And he kicks him over the edge of this cliff that he was about to throw Batman over. And of course he hits the rocks on the bottom, seemingly killing any normal man, and both Bat and Flash look on as the tide comes in, the tide goes out, and Bane's nowhere to be seen. And Batman straight up says, he'll be back. Which makes you wonder why the super speed guy didn't just go down there and, I don't know, keep track of him, but whatever. Later on, you remember White Rabbit was a part of this story? Here she is. So the one girl, Jai, who Bruce was seeing, is taking a bubble bath, and Bruce is leaving a voicemail saying why they had to cancel their date. Meanwhile, White Rabbit comes in and it's just like, do you think Bruce Wayne knows about us? And he's like, do you think Batman knows about us? And they're both like, nah, nobody knows about us. And they touch hands and form back together into one person, because apparently she can be two people at the same time, and that's the twist. Who would have thought that Jai was the White Rabbit? That was totally unexpected and definitely not seeded at all throughout this entire story. So anyway, overarching over the entire thing, I get that the idea of the arc was the fear. Like, how do you push past fear and how do you do all that? I don't feel like this ties it together. I feel like this should have been a Scarecrow arc, but then they were like, okay, but no, it's Bane. And it's like, all right, I guess. Does Batman really fear Bane? I guess that's a good enough question, but this really should have just been a Scarecrow arc. But once it got into the whole Venom and like making everybody buffed out with it, it's like, no, it also had to be Bane. I just wish they would have switched the two, where Bane was like the muscle. He was like working for Crane in order to get the bigger, bulkier Venom, but then Scarecrow was the actual dude with the plan. But I guess Bane's never been much of a follower, so I don't know. I don't know. It just seems lackluster as a final part of the issue. And of course, we all know that Jai was the White Rabbit. That wasn't a twist. The twist was how she managed to do it. It wasn't a thing of oh, okay. So now overall, I give this a 6.5. It's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. It's manageable. I just feel like there was a lot of, I wouldn't even say potential, because really after that first issue with hulked out Two-Face, I don't know how much potential there was. But there was a lot of big ideas and not a lot of big deliveries. And I'm assuming this is the end of the arc. We do still have one issue left in this trade, so maybe that'll just end up with the White Rabbit stuff. But I don't know. It just seems a little bit underwhelming is all. So hoping for better in the next issue, but if we're still continuing the White Rabbit, I'm not sure how much I can really hold out for. Superman number 7, written by Dan Jurgens and Keith Giffen, art by Dan Jurgens as well. Finally on to new writers and artists and such. Maybe I can actually recount this in a reasonable amount of time. So pretty much ignore everything that we've ever had set up in this entire comic. This issue picks up with some big monster thing parading through Metropolis and fighting Superman, putting some innocents at risk. There's a mother and a kid who Superman is defending, and the kid's like, Ma, we don't gotta worry about nothing. Superman's here. And the mother's like, okay, but maybe we should run from the laser blast, little Timmy. And then Superman's entire internal monologue is just so different from how it has been. He's like wisecracking to himself constantly. He's like, he gets hit by this, it's a big robot lizard looking thing, and he gets hit by the lizard's tail, and he's like, okay, that hurt. And then some guy is like filming it for his Facebook, literally says Facebook, and he's like, hey, Superman, smile for Facebook. And Superman's internal monologue is, you gotta be kidding me. So it's a little bit of a different voice for Superman. Regardless, the fight continues on. He uses his X-ray vision to see what's inside this lizard suit. Turns out it's robotic the whole way through, so he's like, cool, I can kill this thing and not feel bad. So he unloads some massive heat vision and then smacks it into a building and just takes it out. And then as the fight is clearly over, all the citizens come up around him. He's like, all right, everybody, stay away, stay that. But then all of the citizens just ignore him and start talking about their own things. They're like, oh, man, he's so cool. Oh, man, he's causing a lot of property damage. Oh, man, can I get his autograph? You just see 1,000 other conversations. And he's like, guys, please stay away. What? Is no one listening to me? Until finally some cleanup crew from Star Labs shows up and Superman's like, all right, I'm just going to leave. You guys can deal with this. And then he overhears the Star Labs guys being, of course, leaving as soon as we get here. He's like, dude, are you serious? Whatever. So we cut to the Himalayas, where we teased at the end of last issue that Hellespont, the new villain, is. And apparently he's been analyzing this planet, and he sees that Superman is the super strongest guy here. He's also the one who has the lizard robots. Just saying. So he's just sitting there monologuing to himself, saying like, soon even the Kryptonian will serve me. Hellespont. By the way, in reading this, he just sounds like Skeletor in my head. Like, there's no changing that. That's how it is now. So he's like, oh, they're all going to serve me, blah, blah, blah. Go fetch him for me, my minions. So then we cut to the Daily Planet, and Jimmy and Lois are both talking to Clark, who's trying to write up a Superman piece. And because their conversations keep on overlapping, Lois is saying, like, hey, do you have that Superman thing? And Jimmy is saying, hey, I have bed bugs. Can I stay with you? And Clark says yes to Lois, but Jimmy takes it as a yes. And then Perry shows up and says, hey, Clark, do you have that Superman piece? And Lois says, hey, Clark, can you pick up my sister from the train station? And Clark says yes to Perry. So Lois is like, thanks, buddy. It's just a little humorous bit, but it's so weird coming from this book, which has not had that in 6 issues. So then we get to Star Labs, the thing that they picked up, they're analyzing it. They're like, okay, we have no idea where the energy source for this thing is, and genuinely we have no idea how to even open it, so let's do a submolecular view, whatever. And then a big flash of light, and it just disappears, and one of the guys is like, oh my god, the boss is going to kill us. And he's like, well, what if we just say it's self-destructed? Are you kidding me, Joe? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's weird to have humor. That's all I'm trying to get across here. Is it's very strange. So Clark's still writing his story when all of a sudden he hears screaming down the hall, and wouldn't you know it, it's another one of those monster lizard things. And he's like, oh, shucks, that thing must have tagged me. Got to keep an eye out for that now. And then he runs into a back room and opens up his shirt to reveal the Superman costume, which I don't have a problem with. But then the suit, like, expands, like it's biomolecular tech. They say it's Kryptonian biotech, which in the Action Comics series, it definitely was just a shirt that changed colors, but regardless, it's now apparently nanobots, so whatever. So he flies out, swoops back in, takes the monster, and just goes right through. And he's like, all right, I'm keeping this away from civilians this time, because screw the civilians. And as he's fighting this thing in the sky, it teleports back to the Himalayas, and immediately it starts to, like, disintegrate, and it reveals that it teleported him right into Hellespont's lair. And he's like, all right, well, guess I got to go in here to find out what's going on. So he goes inside, and there's literally just 4 pages of Hellespont being like, you know, Earth seems very important. To me, Hellespont, leader and emperor of the Damonites army. Read any Wildstorm book to find out what that is. Superman, you will serve me and all my people. And Superman's like, no. And he's like, fool, how dare you fight against me, Hellespont? I must kill you now. And so he attacks him and knocks Superman down, and he's like, you and I are brothers from different worlds now, Superman, and you will see that in time. And then Superman makes the relation in his head between, like, siblings, and then it just shows one panel of Lois's sister standing at the train station. And then we end. And I just, okay, sure. Yeah, that's how we should end this comic. So it basically just seems to me like this issue is Superman's just like, nobody gets him. And everyone's just like, yeah, you do your thing and we're just going to do our thing. But like, deal with it. Like, nobody's bending over to help anybody else here. I don't know. It's a weird intro to a new writer just because it does nothing to bridge the gap. Absolutely nothing. If you read issues 1 through 6 and then you picked this up, you may as well have just picked up an entirely different book. Not that that's inherently a bad thing, but it's just such a culture shock. So it's fine. It's a decent enough, well-written book. I'm not sure how I like snarky Superman. Like, the entire time Hellspawn is talking, what does he keep saying? He walks in and Hellspawn introduces himself and basically he's like, join me, and Superman's like, that's not gonna happen. Now tell me why I'm here. And Hellspawn keeps going on in his monologue, and he's like, I'm still waiting for you to tell me why I'm here. Tick tock, buddy. I'm not even kidding. That's like pretty much exactly what he does. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's a new direction. I think Hellspawn is way too try-hard of a villain, and I gotta say, with reading the whole line, I'm really kind of sick of Demonites, but regardless, they're everywhere, so I'm just going to deal. It's a 6. Art is fine. I can't say I really like the design of Hellspawn, and nothing else really stood out to me, so it's just okay the whole way through. Writing, at least I understand, like, the basics of it, and I'm able to finish a page in under 20 minutes, so that's the change. But it's still just, it's not doing anything great. It's not doing anything super. Green Lantern New Guardians number 7, written by Tony Bedard, art by Tyler Kirkham. We left off last issue with Invictus, the Archangel, being attacked by Saint Walker using his Blue Lantern powers and them just straight up not working on him. And then newly smartened Bleeze is coming in for the assist. This issue picks up with Invictus still just like about to kill Saint Walker, and he's like, are you serious? You just tried to use your Blue Lantern powers on me to try to quell my rage? Let me tell you why I'm angry. And then we get a backstory, and his backstory is apparently the Vega star system. He and a whole race of angels were just like holy gods to the people of this star system, and they did great things, and everyone was happy and super cool. And one race in particular were the stone denizens of Shangri-Lin, and they were the angels looked fondly upon them and taught them like how to spread the good word of the Vega system to the rest of the galaxy or universe or whatever. And they were glad to do that. But then one day Larfleeze showed up, and he went around killing angels, because every time that Larfleeze kills somebody, he's able to like take their soul essence thing and imprint it into a Orange Lantern construct. But the angel souls did a Highlander thing where they merged. When one died, it just empowered the rest of them. So Larfleeze was consistently unable to make an angel or a angel into a Orange Lantern construct, until finally, after killing so many of them, there was just Invictus left, and they fought together. But of course, Invictus is now super powered, so he tore open a hole in the universe and was going to throw Larfleeze in. And at the moment where it was going to happen, Larfleeze revealed that the denizens of Shangri-Lin were all killed by Larfleeze and turned into Orange Lantern constructs, and they were attacking Invictus. And Invictus was so heartbroken that his good little helper boys would be killed, and the Vega system dream was no more. They ripped off his wings, and Larfleeze cast him into the hole in the universe, never to be seen again. But of course, Invictus is still super powerful, so he survived. And Saint Walker's asking, like, okay, but why did you make the whole giant starship thing? And he's like, this is how I remember Vega. I have genetically modified all these races of people to more closely imitate how I remember them, and I will take this star system and we will go to the Vega system, and we're just going to kind of push everybody who lives there out of the way, and we will take their place as the proper Vega system. And basically that whole story happened. And Kyle sits up and he's like, "Excuse me, hi. Out of that whole story, you didn't quite explain why you took our rings." And he's like, "I didn't do. Why would I need your rings? I'm literally a super powerful angel." And Kyle's like, "Okay, well then, Glomulus, do you know who did it?" And he's like, "It just beats me." And then we cut back to Larfleeze, who's just kind of bitching over the fact that they haven't succeeded yet, and he's getting real angry at his guardian who's there, who I forget the name of. And then we cut to Bleeze, who, sorry, Sade. Sade was her name. So then Bleeze is told by Sade, like, "Hey, you got to get down there and you got to help them. Do you understand, Bleeze?" And she's like, "I'm going to go down there and I'm going to kick some ass, but I don't take orders from nobody. Bye." So she goes down to the planet, and then basically all the lanterns who are down there start talking to Invictus and just trying to, like, talk him into not being a dick. So Kyle is taking the lead on it, and he's like, "Okay, here's the thing, buddy. How long have you been gone?" And he's like, "I've been gone millions of years." And he's like, "Cool, cool, 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 cool. So people live in Vega, and you're going to kill, like, a lot of people if you just, try to push them out of the way." And he's like, "They're all sinners. I need my original people." And he's like, "Okay, but, like, they're not, you say that because you think they've been corrupted by Larfleeze, but, like, Larfleeze also spent a lot of that time in hiding as well, and they just kind of evolved naturally without him, so they're not really that much of sinners. Also, by the way, you also, like, how many planets on that opposite whole of the universe did you, like, strip mine in order to make your orrery? How many people did you forcibly put onto these planets in order to make your genetically modified races? Like, you're not exactly a super cool dude yourself." And as soon as Kyle starts making a point, Invictus is like, you guys are all, like, emotionally based, all right? I am the truth and the way and the light, and shut up. And so they feel like they're about to make a little push to be like, are we finally going to get him through? But then Bleeze crashes in, and we get into the fight of the issue. And Invictus is pissed off because he thinks that he was just trying to distract them. And so fight. Invictus sees them all as monsters. Saint Walker pulls Monk aside and was like, "Hey, you can channel all the other colors as an Indigo Tribe member," which I didn't know was a thing, but apparently is a thing. So he's like, "I almost got through to him with my blue lantern ring," which he didn't, but he feels like he did. So he just needs a supercharge from Indigo Tribe, which he tries, and it didn't work. So as soon as it didn't work, he's super pissed off at Saint Walker because he's like, "You're evil, Saint Walker, but you pretend to be good, and that's the worst kind of evil, so I'm going to kill you first." And then Arkillo comes in, jumps in the way, and was like, "You're not going to hurt him because he's my but then, he gets blasted out of the way. And then Kyle literally chalks up and he's like, "Are you kidding me? You claim yourself to be an angel, but you're missing the miracle all around you. We should hate each other. All these different cores. We literally had a war over this before the New 52. What you're seeing here is a real, true, honest-to-God miracle. The real miracle was the friends we made along the way. I'm not kidding." He doesn't say the exact words, but that's pretty much it. And Invictus is so moved by this, he's like, "Fine, I will let you live on one condition. You have to be the one to kill Larfleeze." So that's where we leave off. The gang is on their way to maybe go kill Larfleeze. The real treasure were the friends we made along the way. Okay, sure. I like it. I think it's a fine enough ending. I think because they set up Invictus as he's not really the worst guy. He's just super duper, like, morally black and white, and he has very high standards, which is not inherently evil, but it is definitely clashing, which is an interesting take on it. It's a nice way to just have something that is not a straight up villain for them to fight. So I like it, but I also feel like we're not, I mean, that's the end of this trade, but we're not done with Invictus yet, guaranteed. Like, it's still going to resolve in some fight, whether that's the Lanterns and Invictus against Larfleeze, a three-way fight, Larfleeze and the Lanterns against Invictus. I don't know. We're not done with them yet. It does feel a little bit of a whatever. ending, but it's not really an ending is the reason why. So overall, I'm giving this a 7. Perfectly fine. I am liking where it's going, and I look forward to seeing how the arc progresses from here. Aquaman number 7, written by Geoff Johns, art by Ivan Reis. We starting a new arc. So last issue was, I think, Mara beating up some people in a grocery store. And this issue is opening up in Brazil with a woman dressed in white with a whole bunch of garment stuff on, running through the jungle, and she is being hunted by someone. And as we see a harpoon about to hit her, she gets like a future sight vision of it, sees her being impaled by it, and then moves out of the way so that she's not impaled, but then apparently it explodes. So she's already not doing so hot. And we see some guy trudging through the flames of the explosion saying like, you may see the future, but you don't see anything or everything. And who is it but Black Manta, of course. So the fight continues, and it's just, swords against swords. Eventually, Black Manta pulls out his like laser beam thing from his eyes and gets a good shot off on her. And as she's laying down on the ground, pretty much unable to continue fighting, he pulls off her little veil to see her face, and then he takes off his own like helmet, and it's like, all right, let's do this face to face, Kahina the Seer. And then he just talks for a second and be like, here's the thing, you're looking for that savage girl, aren't you? I'm going to find her, she's going to die like you, and then I'm going to kill your entire family back in Tehran. And she's like, no. And he's like, yes. And then he takes a knife, slits her throat, and as she's dying, she calls out for Arthur. And he's like, oh, he can't help you. Arthur's going to lose everything as well, the same way I have. And he opens up a box she had with her, which has some gold little trinket in it, and walks off. And as she's dying, she gets a future sight vision again of Aquaman being impaled with his own trident by Black Manta. So that's your teaser for the arc, I suppose. Cut to the Atlantic, where Aquaman's helping pull a ship ashore during a massive storm. Looks like a giant wave's about to crash down on top of it, but Mara sends it in the other direction. And then we see the beach home of Steve and Shin as Aquaman and Mara are approaching, and they're like, all right, let's go, we got to take care of this. And we just get a recap of why they're there. They want to find out who sank Atlantis because of the issue number 5 revelations, and Steve and Shin knows the most about Atlantis than anyone else, except for, its actual location. So they're going to get some info. Inside of Steven's apartment, he gets a phone call, and as soon as he answers it, I don't think we ever find out who's on the line. Aquaman busts in and just hands him the thing. And he's like, here, can you tell me what's up? And Steven reveals like, okay, yeah, a lot of people probably wanted to sink Atlantis. It was a super society back in the day, and people back then were probably jealous. So yes, it had enemies. I don't know specifically who, but maybe it was like the Trench or something. Whatever happened to those guys? And Aquaman's like, I killed them. I killed them all. And he's like, yeah, okay. They survived for millions of years before you. I'm sure they just died. So as they're starting to see the hologram thing in there, and Steven's geeking out over it, a portal opens up in Steven's apartment, and a woman and a panther jump through, and she screams out, stay back, Arthur. Shin is mine to kill. And she goes trying to kill Stephen Shin. Arthur tries to stop her, but she gets past him, and then Maris tosses her through a wall, and she makes a water panther in order to fight her normal panther, and then they start doing the charge against each other. But then Arthur jumps in the way and was like, all right, ladies, calm down. Let's talk this out. And the woman who showed up was just like, calm down. Since when have you ever cared about the surface dwellers, and especially Stephen Shin? And Mary's just like, who is she? What the hell is going on? Somebody give me a little bit of backstory here. And she says how Kahina's dead, Black Manta did it, they stole her golden seal, whatever that may be. If Black Manta's is involved, then Shin is definitely behind it because of some reason. And Mara is just continuously getting more and more pissed off as we get the final page reveal of, out of the rubble of Shin's house, an image of Aquaman and his team of people. I'm going to guess by the name of the trade, it's the others. And we got Arthur Kahina, guy named Vostok X, the operative, POW, and her name is Yawara. So that's her team. Pretty much just a setup issue. Like, it's just getting, okay, we gave you the tease of here's the thing that, like, we're collecting the golden trinkets and killing off this team. And it was a team that Aquaman was previously on in his youth because he's still wearing that weird necklace that showed up in the first Justice League arc. So, it's interesting. I don't know. There's just not enough for me to make, like, an informed, like, do I like where this is going? Do I not? It's just not there yet. I feel like if this has to do with the Who Sunk Atlantis plot, it seems a bit contrived that it happens to be happening at the exact same time as Black Manta launching this plan. But I can see it flowing together. I think there's a chance. But to me, it just seems like the Who Sunk Atlantis thing is just going to be like in the background for a while this main plot happens. So in terms of that, I don't know. I need another issue at least to say whether or not I like it. For this particular issue, not talking about the plot as a whole, I think it was fine. I think it was perfectly well done. I honest to God, the saving grace for almost all of this, whether I like the plot or not, is the art. Ivan Reis is fantastic, just the way he does, like, pretty much everything here. Very dark and moody, but at the same point, it has light where it needs to be. It's not just, it uses light and shadow effectively. It doesn't just put it all in shadow for the sake of darkness. So yeah, no, definitely very well done. I'm going to give it like a 7.5. And the only reason I would say that high, considering that I'm not sure how I feel about the plot yet, is it's still well written. I still like just that little bit of standoff with Mara, her getting pissed off about that. The whole Black Manta scene at the beginning, it's very well written. I like that aspect of it. Plot-wise, we'll see. Art-wise, great. So 7.5 for this. See where it goes from here. The Flash, number 7, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul. We left off last issue with Captain Cold attacking, Patty and everyone being involved, and Patty nearly falling to her death. Seemingly actually did falling to her death. This issue picks up with the moments right before that, and Flash is like, just gushing over Patty, like, man, she's so cool and cute, and she smells good, and she's cute, and she's falling to her death, and that's all because of me, but she's cute. And then we see a 2-page full spread recap of the last 9 seconds before the last issue ended. And we see that, no, actually, despite the fact it definitely ended with Barry just being stuck underneath Cold, turns out with 2 seconds to spare, he pushed Cold off of him and then went and saved the ship. So, yeah. And of course, all those like monitor things that were set up last issue of him not using too much of his speed force energy, he's talking about how he's totally ignoring them right now, and he knows he shouldn't be, but regardless, he is. So he saves the people who are going to be crushed by the ship, and as he saves Patty, Patty's like, Barry? And he's like, Barry was safe. He was in the other half of the ship. He's over there. And she goes, no, Barry, oh God. And as Flash looks behind him, it turns out that him hitting 100% on those numbers caused a wormhole to open up that was sucking up the half of the ship that had Iris and theoretically Barry in it. So he runs after it. He tries jumping up to catch him because it's a wormhole up in the sky. And he just can't get a grip on Iris's hand. And they all disappear. And he's like, oh my God, I totally screwed that up. I need to take this out on someone. And he fishes Captain Cold out of the ice and just starts wailing on him. He's like, why did you do this? Bam, bam. And he's like, because your little EMP thing is the reason my sister isn't going to get medical care. He's like, are you serious right now? There are thousands of people out there who don't have medical care. I'm sorry you think this is on me, but it ain't. How dare you put other lives at risk? You are, oh God, you are pissing me off. So as he leaves Captain Cold for the authorities, he's like, that's not the way. But don't worry, I may not be able to affect what has happened, but I can shape my future. And then we go over to Dr. Elias's lab at the something or something. It has a sign there, but I can't read it. And he's basically telling Dr. Elias, like, all right, I'm going to use this treadmill thing. We're going to power up all the cells. When we do, I need you to promise that one of these cells is going to go to Lisa. Is that her name? Snart? I don't know. Whatever Cold's, Lisa Snart. Because he's made a promise to Captain Cold, I guess. And he's like, all right, cool. So here's what you got to do, Barry. You got to run really fast, but once the cells hit 100%, they'll stop absorbing your energy. So you have to stop before then when that big red light comes on. Got it? And he's like, I gotcha. And he starts running, and he's like, okay, but I'm not actually going to stop because the only way that I'm going to be able to save all those people I let go through the wormhole is if I also go through the wormhole. So I'm just going to make another wormhole. So he runs super fast. He charges up all the cells, and then he runs through a wormhole. We get just a page of a bunch of talking gorillas in Africa who are like praising that there's a lightning storm or something, and there's a spiritual ones who are like, of course, the second coming is above it is upon us, brothers. And then there's like a militaristic group off to the side who are like, they're so stuck in their old ways. And that's just a page. That's something we'll get to later, I suppose. Meanwhile, in Central City, he kept his word, and one of the fuel cells was used to help Lisa get her operation. And Snart, he sees that and he's like, it's okay, sis, I'm here. And she's like, after all the shit you put me through, you should have left me dead. So, that's a bummer. Then we cut over to Director Singh's office, where Patty's coming over basically just to grieve. But like, she was already at someone else's apartment for grieving. She's here because she didn't want to grieve anymore, but like she needs to. She's talking to the director and saying like, man, the power's still out. This is all the Flash's fault. The Flash sucks so hard. God, I hate the Flash. Oh God, I never told Barry I loved him. Boo hoo hoo. And as she's crying in Director Singh's shoulder, all the lights in the city come back on because Flash's fuel cells are that efficient. Additionally, just because I know it'll come up later, they have a little shot of a whole bunch of flutes at Singh's apartment, but he doesn't play the flute, so they're not his. That'll come up. I'm sure it will, regardless. Then we see what happened to Barry. He sees like his whole life just in a weird time spiral thing. And he's like, oh God, I'm seeing my life flash before my eyes. Am I dead? And someone grabs him by the shoulder and says, not yet, but you will be if you don't get me out of here. And we see this dude in like this weird light suit thing. And that's all the best I could describe. We'll see him on the cover next month. But regardless, it's good. It's a fine issue. I think that the fact the first like 5 pages of it are dedicated to stuff we already knew seem a little bit weird. Like, at least they used it for a bit of character development in the way of how Barry feels about Patty. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, but yeah, we know the ship was falling. And you spent like 4 or 5 pages just doing that again. It just felt like they kind of wanted to end this issue with him getting into that wormhole, and then we'll pick up with what happens inside of it next issue. But then they didn't have enough to really fill the interim. So, I don't know. I'm just a bit iffy. Also, this is an issue that doesn't really have much of a fight, which I kind of appreciate, but it also does leave it feeling a bit empty as an issue in terms of moving things forward. I don't know. It's good. It's a good issue. It's solid. It sets a lot of stuff up. It does a lot for where we're going from here. If anything, I would say this is probably the start of the next arc, despite the fact we've got a couple issues left in this trade. But it just feels a little bit hollow for some reason. So overall, I'm going to give this it's a low 7, but still a 7. And most of that is the art and the layouts and just how fantastic it looks throughout. So yeah, I'm down with where it's going, but this particular issue was like, okay, yep. We ended that bit very quickly with Captain Cold because I guess we just needed a Captain Cold story, but now we're moving on to this wormhole other dimension story. So let's just see what happens when we get there. The Fury of Firestorm, The Nuclear Men, number 7, written by Ethan Van Sciver and Joe Harris, art by Ethan Van Sciver. Start of a new arc, question mark, question mark. Kind of just picking up where we left off from. Terrorist attack 2 issues ago. Last issue, Ronnie and Jason went their separate ways, with Jason kind of staying around and Ronnie wanting to go chase the people who caused the attack. This issue picks up with a news reporter going to the ground zero of the attack where Jason is, and basically being like, okay, well, as you can see, there's still a metahuman here. Oh God, is he the one who caused this? And then static. And it turns out Jason actually turned the TV camera to butterflies so that they wouldn't cause any more issues. But Madam Zither is currently freaking out because of the PR nightmare that this is. And basically the entire 3-page scene here just boils down to Jason wanting to know why those terrorists were there and who even they were. And Zither being like, genuinely, I have no idea. And she's like, the issue here is, though, people, you guys all kind of look the same. All the Firestorms have very, matching styles between them. So we have to, they've got some knockoff. You've got the original. We have to convince the people that you're one of the good guys. Meanwhile, whoever it is that's actually out there doing this, they're, going to destabilize the world and cause mass panic or whatever. So, yeah, I guess we should probably stop them. Then we cut over to Ronnie, who is just reminiscing over how great of a football player he was back in the day. And then we see that he is going around just following leads, trying to get to the rogue Firestorms and the Russian guy, aka Pozar, so they can take him out. As soon as he flies over this one base in the middle of barren nowhere, they fire up some rockets or missiles or whatever that apparently have some virtual netting that allows them to capture Ronnie, and he loses his powers, falls back to the field, or falls down to the ground, and then the people pick him up in the back of a pickup truck and drive away. And we see Pozar is within the crowd of people somewhat nearby, and he takes note of this and goes off to do something. Meanwhile, Jason heads back home to his dad. His dad's like, "Oh, Jason, you're alive. We didn't know anything after the explosion, but Zither told us you were safe. It's so good to see you alive." And he's like, "Yeah, here's the thing. Zither tells you a lot of stuff. How much of it really is true?" And then Ronnie's mom shows up, and she's like, "Oh, you're back. You're back. Where's Ronnie?" And he's like, He's like, "Oh, God, my baby boy. Don't tell me he's dead. Please, please. Why? And for some reason, Jason doesn't chime up and say, "Yeah, no, he's still alive." He just lets her think that her son is dead. So that was weird. Regardless, he might be, because we see him being completely tied up with a bunch of tubes and wires around him. And this crazy scientist-looking guy is saying hey buddy, wake up, time for you to tell me some secrets. And he's like, "Okay, here's a secret for you, Firestorm." And when he tries to transform, he gets electrocuted or something. And he's like, "Oh, okay, here's the thing. All these wires and whatever are going to contain your powers, so you're going to go ahead and talk, or else we're going to have to get a little bit more angry with you." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you can't do this, I'm an American." And he's like, "Okay, so you don't seem we've been watching you don't seem to have the power to transmute objects. You just fly around and do energy blasts." And he's like, "Well, yeah, I don't have all the powers." He's like, "Oh, so there's more of you. Cool." And he's like, I didn't say that." Then we cut back over to Zithertech for 10 seconds. Jason is visiting Tanya in the hospital, and Zither's assistant shows up and is like, "Hey, here's the thing, Jason. Zither has been really nice to you, and she's never nice to anybody. So please don't get on her bad side. Play the game. Just play the game, or else you're going to get played by it." And she hands him a folder with just some concept art of 2 other Firestorms, which I guess are supposed to be files on where to find them, but it's literally just the concept art. So then we go to Ronnie, who's still being tortured, and apparently they're pumping him with nuclear fire, which his body is able to absorb but not expel. So he's going to die. And meanwhile, as they're doing these things on him, Pozar shows up, starts wrecking shop. They had another Firestorm there, but Pozar made quick work of him and then killed the scientist. And then as he does so, he looks over at Ronnie, who's like, "Oh, for the love of God, Posar, please help me." And he's like, "All right, just remember I did this for you because I don't do this very often." And he frees Ronnie from his chains. And he's like, "No, you don't understand, Posar. I didn't want you to let me go." And then we just see that Ronnie, it seems like, has his hand or his arm cut off, like at the forearm, his left hand. I genuinely, these last 2 pages were the most confusing for me. Like, did he want Posar to put him at like a mercy killing or something? There's a whole bunch of energy like just billowing out of his cut off hand. When did he lose his hand? It definitely wasn't lost 2 pages earlier. I don't know when this happened. I don't know what's happening right now. Overall, like the issue. It's a fine enough issue. It's probably a little bit boring on Jason's side of things, but that's necessary to set up the next thing he's going to do, which is seemingly seek out some other firestorms. But the Ronnie side was interesting, at least, with him being captured. But then on these last couple pages, I'm just like, I don't know what we're doing here. What is going on? Genuinely, this is one point where a little bit of a caption box saying like, "And Ronnie has lost his hand, and that's why he asked Posar to kill him," or something. Like, I'm just confused. Maybe I'm dense, but I don't think it's super obvious regardless. So yeah, it's got some issues because it's on one half of the story it's pretty boring just to set up the next thing, and on the other half of the story it's exciting but then very quickly confusing. And I don't know. I'm giving it a 6. A lot of the saving grace on that is the art. It's very well done art. I can't complain much about that at all. There are a few weird faces here or there, but genuinely it's fine throughout. It's just, it feels like it's kind of like it wanted to split into 2 plots, but then both of them are equally spinning their wheels. So I guess I'm just waiting for them to get back together or for them to actually do something. The Savage Hawkman number 7, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by Cliff Richards. We left off last issue with the dead coming back to life and making their way across the Brooklyn Bridge because of Gentleman Ghost's Mortis Orb. This issue picks up same exact thing. Hawkman is on the Brooklyn Bridge and he is fighting against hordes of zombies. We have a TV reporter who's providing the dialogue, whereas all of the internal monologue is from Hawkman, just basically saying, "Hey, here's what happened over the past 2 issues," in case you haven't been paying attention. So, pretty brief scene overall. He's just going around. Anytime a zombie gets too close to a person, he comes at it and it's just like either drops it into the river or knocks it away with his mace. But the TV camera crew gets some pretty good glimpses at it, and he's flying through the air like some sort of eagle or falcon man. So anyway, he's like seeing this entire horde of the dead, and he's like, "All right, let's do this." And then as soon as he does, a giant electrical storm comes out of New York and just zaps all the zombies and drops them all re-dead. So he's like, "Oh, all right, cool. I'm going to go check out what that was then." And so he flies off over to the center of the city, and he, surprise crossover, finds Static Shock, who also is now based in New York. And he's like, "Hey, kid, so was that you on the thing?" And he's like, "Oh, hey, cool wings. You some kind of Hawkman?" And he's like, "Yeah, good guess." So, yeah, him and Static are just talking for a little bit, and they're like, "All right, you got any idea what's going on, Hawkman?" He's like, "Yeah, there's a crazy ghost who's trying to come back to life with a thing called a magic mortis orb, which I helped bring back into existence, and he's going to kill a whole bunch of people." And Static's only reply is, "Damn." So, basically, they're zapping zombies left and right until they realize, okay, these group of zombies are heading west, those groups of zombies are heading east, so they would naturally converge at Central Park. So that's where the Mortis Orb's got to be. So they head over to Central Park, and they find where Gentleman Ghost is. Static's holding back the zombies so Hawkman can be the star of the book. And As he approaches Gentleman Ghost, he of course summons like those weird phantom things that were able to hurt him before, whereas he couldn't land a shot. But Hawkman's like, but I've learned. See, their weapons are solid, so therefore I need to focus on the weapons. Haha, so smart. So he fights the weapons for a bit until finally he gets sick of it and then tries elbowing one in the chest, except this time it works. So he doesn't know why it's working, but he's just like, whatever, I'm just going to go ahead and start actually slashing them. So he starts slashing these phantoms and taking them all out. And as he approaches Gentleman Ghost, he's like, I'm sorry, you haven't even seen a fraction of my power, and with this Mortis Orb, I'm even more so. For instance, behold. And he gets zapped with this, like, magic bolt from the orb. And Static's like, you doing all right up there? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. Don't worry about it. So, finally, it's Gentleman Ghost's destiny time. He starts draining all the life from the area. Hawkman's out of time. But as he starts to do so, the Warlock, Julian Gates, the dude who originally had the Mortis Orb and locked it away, he's back somehow, and he grabs Gentleman Ghost and pulls him into like the dead zone, like just a portal behind him. And before they go, Hawkman pulls the Mortis Orb and goes yoink, and then Gentleman Ghost and him go away along with all the other dead people. So then Static's like, hey, all right, looks like you did it. So what are you going to do with the Mortis Orb? He's like, well, I can't turn it off, so I'm just going to put it somewhere far, far away from life. So he goes to Antarctica, he finds a big chasm, and he just drops it in there. He's like, hope that doesn't come back to bite me later. Anyway, he goes back home to the Bronx. He passes by Emma and Singh, who are just chilling out, waiting for him to come back. And Singh shows him the TV where the TV crew is showing Hawkman. And they're like, dude, check this guy out. And Hawkman's like, damn it, now I got publicity. So then we see him sitting on top of the Empire State Building in his Hawkman form. And he's like, maybe I just needed this. Maybe I just needed some peace and quiet. I've definitely seen my fair share of dead bodies recently. And then all of a sudden he's attacked by Blast from the Past, I guess. It's the assistant to the dude from like 3 issues ago, Ascana. And she's just like, show me what you got, Hawkman. Sure. It's never too soon to bring back old characters. Okay. I don't know how I wanted them to end this. Like, genuinely, I don't, like, whatever. Okay, so the zombie thing, I like the team up with Static because it just felt like they don't even know each other. They don't have to like each other, but they both are on the same side. So they're like, cool, let's just make a team here and then, we'll go our separate ways, whatever. Like, we don't ever have to talk again. I like that. That felt like a really cool, like, team dynamic just in sense of, we're both New York-based superheroes. We're just going to run into each other occasionally and there's no harm in working together. I like that. But when it comes down to how, like, the zombies were basically just there so, like, there's always some sort of threat. And then when they finally got to Gentleman Ghost, Hawkman didn't even beat him. Like, Hawkman lost. It was just because the Warlock put an extra layer of security so that he'd come back and take whoever's trying to use the orb again. That's it. That's the only... Hawkman did nothing here. So it doesn't really feel like a big win. It just kind of feels like, okay, that kind of happened around Hawkman and he activated the orb, but that's it. He was just an inciting incident. Like, everything else just kind of happened. So, I don't know. It just felt kind of weird in that sense. Not bad per se, but just weird. And as for the ending reveal of, like, Ascana is back. Okay. Is that the route we already want to go down? Like, if you have something big for her planned, I guess. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's a good idea to just be like, yeah, we've already run out of stories to tell, so we're going back to that one we just did. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give Savage Hawkman a 6.5. And most of that comes down to I really like the way they did both Hawkman and Static in this issue. Primarily Static, because I've only ever seen him in Teen Titans, which is not a great art style, and his own book, which is doubly not a great art style. Well, okay, it's a fine art style for what it is, but it doesn't have this same sort of, like, really art feel to it. So it's cool to see him, like, taken seriously, almost. The other two are very cartoony. This one is very real and serious. So I really like the way that looks. So yeah, Hawkman 6.5. I guess we'll see what Ascana's up to next time. All-Star Western number 7, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. Left off last issue with Jonah and Arkham breaking up a child enslavement camp thing, and the ringleader named Thurston Moody escaped from Gotham and headed down to New Orleans, and Jonah decided to give chase, and Arkham came along with. So they're down here, and then the moment they arrive, the mill blows up, and there's just this giant inferno with people inside it, and they're just like, all right, let's get to work. So Jonah rushes in with his horse. He puts as many people in on it as he can, sends people out on the horse, and he finds one woman who's cuddled up in a corner, and as people arrive on the scene, they're like, oh God, is anyone still inside? And someone's like, oh, I saw a man go in there, but he didn't come out. And then Jonah comes out with the woman, but he is badly injured from the flames. And then 2 people run up, and they're like, wow, hey, Jonah Hex, never thought I'd see him risk his life for anybody. And Arkham's like, who are you people? And he's like, we're friends of Jonah, just save his life. So they put a weird amulet around his neck, put him on horseback. The woman there decides to stay behind to help with the fire. Meanwhile, Arkham and the man go back to the shop. And then when they get there, it's been some time. Jonah's come back from the dead, seemingly. And the man's name is Hannibal. The woman's name is possibly Manser. Just context clues is all I got here. Regardless, they say oh, we brought you back with that amulet around the neck. And Jonah's like, yeah, very funny. Anyway, I got something I need to do here, going after Moody. And they're like, oh, here's the thing, Jonah, we need your help. It's about that mill explosion. And Arkham's like, yeah, no, they told me all about it while you were asleep. There are some anarchists, and they might be working with the law, and they call themselves the August 7, and they kill women and children, and they explode buildings. They're attacking immigrants. We need your help. And Jonah's like, not interested. Genuinely, truly, that's on you guys. Genuinely don't care. And Hannibal stops him, and he's like, I'm only asking to be polite, Hex. And he's like, oh, you want to fight? All right, let's fight. And then Hannibal just throws him across the room, because apparently the magical amulet thing that he was wearing helps make him stronger, faster, and healthier. So, yeah. Also, his name is Nighthawk. He's the guy at the end of issue 6, and the woman's name is Cinnamon, also at the end of issue 6. So, yeah, they fight for a little bit, and Hannibal gets the one-up on Hex, and he's like, fine, tell me about the anarchists. So then we get an extended, ruse scene where Jonah goes down to a ferry boat where there's essentially, a gladiatorial arena inside of it, and this giant beast of a man is there. He's, being hyped up by the ringleader guy. And then they just send out this tiny little woman to go out and fight her. Her name is Z.C. Bronk. And during the fight, she goes out and she just makes a bunch of small cuts on the guy, and then eventually takes him down after death by 1,000 cuts, and then finally just one big final show because she's so graceful and able to do that. Meanwhile, this entire time, the whole reason Hex is here is that he's posing as someone who is he was a former rebel in the Civil War, which is true, but then he's playing up how much he really hates different races, and how the Union screw all of them, and they're taking away the Southern pride or whatever. And he's saying it loud enough for this other rich guy nearby to be like, yeah, I agree with you, boy. Why don't you come over here with me? And starts telling him about one day the South will rise again, because like that woman in there, Z.C. Bronk, we're not going to win with some overwhelming show of force. No. We're going to win by death by 1,000 cuts until finally we can land the killing blow. I know this is all tying into the plot later, but for right now, it doesn't really do anything, so it's kind of weird. So then we get one page of Nighthawk and Cinnamon talking to Arkham, and they're like, "Yep, we're gonna go out and we're gonna save New Orleans." And he's like, "You're going out doing it as masked crime fighters? Psh, Gotham has none of those and will never have any of those. Mark my words." Blah, blah, blah. So then we go back down to the ferry boat, and the guy's like, Hex, what did you do for a living? He's like, well, I did a lot of physical labor jobs, so I'm pretty darn strong. And the guy's like, well, then have I got to have... And Hex made up the story about spending his last dollars to get here, looking for an honest pay for a white man. And he's like, oh, I got a way for you and I to both make money. So Hex goes into the gladiatorial ring, and he again has to fight this just giant behemoth of a man. And as soon as the dude starts charging, Hex just pushes his head into a wall, throws one punch, and he's out. And so Hex is like, is that all you got? And so ZC Bronk jumps down and is just like, care to dance with me? And that's where it leaves off. So theoretically, they're probably going to fight, which is weird because them fighting is the cover for this issue. So you thought that was going to be something here, but no, saving that for next issue. This is just another setup issue. It's fine. It's just moving. Okay, so we set up, there's an anarchist. They're called the August 7. They're racists. And Hex now has to get involved while also doing his Thurston Moody thing. So, and also we've got was it Blackhawk? Nighthawk. Blackhawk is a book. Nighthawk and Cinnamon, which seemingly do their own things as well. I don't know. It seems a little bit scattershot, but from what I know of this book and how it handled the last arc, all these threads come together in some way. So I'm not too worried about that. But it does feel like this is mostly just setup of, okay, they're in New Orleans. They got to relearn, the lay of the land. And Hex is just going to be a character here. So it's fine. It's a perfectly serviceable book. I think it's best point is probably the art right now. I think it's very well done in the art. And also how it can just let a moment sit. It doesn't need every single caption box to be explained out of and here's this thing that's happening. No, it can just let the art tell the story. And I'm definitely a fan of that. So overall, I'm going to give it a 7. I think it's pretty well done. And I'm looking forward to seeing the continuing adventures in New Orleans. Blackhawks number 7, written by Mike Costa, art by Carlos Urbano and Carlos Rodriguez. We left off last issue with the Blackhawks base being bombed from the inside by someone named Mateo Bischoff. And this issue, what's his name? Wildman, caught in the blast seemingly. So that's important to note. This issue picks up 18 months ago, a flashback to when, I think it's Attila? Kunoichi, sorry. Their names all blend together. When Kunoichi and Wildman first met, because of course they were lovers in the book. And apparently she called for someone from IT to come down because her AC wasn't working and the mechanics couldn't figure it out. So she's lying in her room practically half naked. Wildman comes in, fixes it in a second. It's just oh, well, nice to meet you, man. Hubba, hubba. And she's like, he's cute. And then we cut to now. He's dead. He's dead. He definitely died. So Kunoichi is crying over his body, and they say how there were only 7 casualties, 7 support staff casualties, 5 members of the Blackhawks, general staff, and then Wildman. He died, and also 1 reporter. But regardless, Lady Blackhawk has severe injuries. And everybody's really, really, really shaken up. But they all really, really want revenge. So Attila and Irishman, who are out on the field trying to gather info, they hear about this. They double down their efforts and start beating up everybody until they find info on Mateo Bischoff. After 36 hours, they get an incredible amount of intelligence that basically says, yep, he's definitely responsible, and here's his exact location. And he is a weapons fabricator. He has legitimate business holdings and political influence in Finland. And so despite the fact that he is a legitimate business owner, the Blackhawks team is all packing up, ready to go kill him. And so this is all written in a letter from Lincoln March to his superiors. And he's like, if you guys don't like that I'm doing this, consider this my resignation letter, but regardless, we're going to go kill that guy. Bye. So the team fly in on their jet, and there's a whole bunch of ground support of like security guards and whatnot, but they're like, oh, we're going in through the sunroof, so whatever. So they bomb a hole through the top of the roof and then jump down onto it, and it's basically just an extended fight scene from this point. They're firing off electrocuting bullets, and Kunoichi points out, like, hey, I know these things are supposed to be non-lethal, but, like, what if they give the people a heart attack? And then Lincoln's like, well, it senses their pulse, so if their heart ends up stopping from it, it'll give them another jolt to start it back up again. So just so we know, they're not killing the innocent people who are genuinely just working at a business. So they go through, and there are 2 smaller jets now that they're flying. I think Lincoln's on one, and Canada's on the other. So they're flying around. But Canada gets too low to the ground and takes some damage to one of his ships, so he's already a little bit out of the fight. Kunoichi runs through. Their systems immediately went to lockdown as soon as they started attacking, so Kunoichi jacks in with her nanosights and finds out exactly where Matteo is, and they're like, all right, 2 floors down, let's go. And they start making their way through. Lincoln tells Canada, hey, man, you got to bail because your plane is like literally about to fall out of the air. And he's like, nah, right now there are drones on me. We got to take care of those. So they start shooting the drones. As the ground team makes their way in to Matteo, it's, I think, Irishman and Attila. They're both attacked by a group of nanosites, but because Kunoichi already has nanosights, she's pretty much immune, so she makes her way farther down the hallway. And she runs into Matteo's room, and he's just sitting there at his desk like, ah, so nice of you to come. And she runs at him and then just hits a wall of glass, which is apparently very, very tough. Not unbreakable, but just unbreakable enough that it'll be too late for her to do anything about the noxious gas that's filling the room. But don't worry, it isn't poison. It's actually more nanosights. Because of course it is. So he apparently made the discovery of that like computer city that was however ago, and he was like trying to study them and make like he learned about all their wonders and thought that he could be their ally, but then one day they stopped talking to him and he thought that the Blackhawks must have done something against them, which of course they nuked them from orbit, so yeah, that was fair. But he thought all of their technology is now gone, but it's not. It still lives on inside of Kunoichi. So now he's going to use his own nanosights to control the nanosights in her and fully unlock that technological capability. And he's going to use her as his own living weapon to kill her team. So meanwhile, Canada is literally like, he's just basically flying a paper airplane now. There is no control on this thing at all, but he's trying to steer it to become essentially a kamikaze plane. And he crashes down on top of the office of Matteo, which doesn't kill him. He barely misses, but Matteo's knocked on his ass, and then Canada kicks him in the face. And as Canada gets out of the ship, which he somehow survives, it makes no effort to explain that at all, but he comes out of the plane, and he's like, Kunoichi, are you all right? And Kunoichi's like, yes, dear, I'm fine. But now she's speaking with the cadence of that mother computer brain from like 4 issues ago. And she's got this like heads-up display that looks like her as well. So yeah, she's now infected by the mother computer. It sucks that it took me this long to really remember all their names because, you know, it's canceled next issue. But like, I'm getting it. So I like this. I think it's a solid enough thing, but it does feel really rushed. And I wonder if they had a longer thing planned out when they started this last issue. And then they were like, oh, crap, we got to pick up the pace on this. So they just kind of condensed everything down into one thing. Because the fact that the last issue, all it had was the tease of this man named Matteo Bischoff is behind it, but no one knows who that is. But he killed one of the team members. That seems like something that's going to stretch at least like 6 issues minimum. But now they got 3. So yeah, it feels a little bit rushed, but I do like it. I do like all the ways that it's handling it. And it does just feel like a high impact, super action, like go, 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 Michael Bay speed sort of book. And I like that. I think it's a fine thing for this particular book because it is literally just a bunch of gun-toting action stars. That's literally all they are. So yeah, I'm going to give this a 7. I think it's very good at what it is. If this were any other book and it moved this quickly, I would probably criticize it more. But because it is such an action-heavy book, the fact that they're just running guns so quickly, I'm down with it. Voodoo number 7, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Sami. Basri, we left off last issue with basically I'm going to call the Demonite clone Voodoo and the human version Priscilla, because that's kind of what they do in this book. So we find out that Voodoo is on a manhunt to go attack all the Demonite leaders, and the Blackjack, Fallon are making a escape with Priscilla, who has some mutations of her own. So yeah, this issue picks up with Blackjack and Fallon making their way out. Priscilla's flying behind them, but she's like, hey guys, I haven't transformed for this long. I kind of need to rest. So she turns back human, and she's like, okay, here's the thing. I know everything because my guards gossiped like high schoolers. So go ahead and tell me where I can find the bitch who stole my life, a.k.a. Voodoo. And then we see Voodoo on the Demonite ship just being like, someone tell me the truth. Am I a clone of a human? What's going on around here? And they're like, psh, take her away. And she just starts killing the guards. And she's like, all right, someone better tell me the truth or I'm going to kill all you too. And someone steps up. It's a guy with like some weird markings. And he's like, all right, enough. Voodoo, come with me. So they make their way into this hall. And it's like, the only way I can tell you the truth is just to show you. And they go into this hall of the stereotypical like cloning pods, the like water tubes with people in them. And he's like, here's the thing. Yeah, Earth and humans specifically are really, really good at becoming superheroes. We know this. We have recognized this. But so what we did was we just kept on trying to merge together human DNA and demonite DNA so that you can have the best of that, so that you can activate that metagene. That's the goal. That's the whole reason, yes, you are a clone, but like you're your own thing as well. So we didn't think that would end up with you defying us, but hey, here we are. And she's like, oh, okay. So is my, like, did I do it? Did I do what you wanted me to? And it's like, no, you defied us. So we're going to wipe your memory and then reprogram you. But because we can't clone more of you, like you were a miracle that this even happened. So yeah, we're just going to fix your brain and then put you back out there. But luckily, in order to stop you, we have a whole bunch of your failed clones. And we see this just monstrous beast versions of Voodoo start attacking her. Back on Earth, Priscilla is trying to remember things that the Demonites did to her, or at least Blackjack's trying to get her to remember, but she has very purposely blocked those memories, and she does not want to know about them. But they finally make their way to a safe room, a bunker inside of whatever place they're in, and they just chill out for a second while Blackjack makes a call to, I'm blanking on his name. Hold on. I know it. It's Lincoln from Blackhawks. Regardless, he, Andrew Lincoln, there it is. He shows up and they have a call, and basically he's like, hey, you know I'm still your boss, right? Like, I am the leader of the Blackjacks. And Blackjack is like, yeah, I know, and I'm sorry. And he's like, the Black Razors. And I'm having my own stuff at Blackhawks. So, like, do you know what you're doing? And he's like, yeah, I totally, guys. Like, cool, I trust you. Here's some extra info. And then we cut over to Priscilla and Fallon, who are talking, and Priscilla's like, hey, I never got a chance to thank you for letting me out of my prison. And Fallon's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's the least I could do. And Priscilla decks Fallon. She's like, the least you could, you knew I was there for months, and you didn't do anything. And she's like, I was doing my job. And she's like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, that totally fixes everything, you bitch. And Blackjack steps in. He's like, whoa, okay, here's the thing. There was an exploded Damonite ship not too far from here. Might be where Voodoo was. Should we go? And she's like, yeah, let's go. Because if there are people in danger, I'm not just going to sit around like it's my job. So, yeah, there's some spunk on her. Back on the Damonite ship, Voodoo has busted a hole in the side of the ship so that all the failed clones start flying out. she has to puncture a few of their like heads with her shape-shifting abilities, but she does end up killing them all. And she feels bad about it because they literally are clones of her as well. Like they are all linked in some way, and she can feel their like sadness and their pain and dying. But she patches up the hole in the hull, and then she just starts going on a rampage on all those clone tubes and just starts breaking all of them, just screaming, "No more clones! Never again!" And the dude, the Daemonites in charge of it is like, "You are killing them! They are not ready to be released! What are you doing?" And she's like, "Yeah, exactly. Now it's your turn." He's like, "All right, up. Before you do, I just want to tell you that we are offering you a promotion to commander of all of the hybrid Daemonites on Earth." And she's like, tempting. So then we go to where the ship exploded, and Priscilla can like feel Voodoo was there, and like can like feel her emotions of how she discovered she was a clone there, and she's like just sensing that she was there very recently. So she screams out like, "Where are you? Why did you do this to me?" And then a portal with Voodoo opens up. She steps out and she's like, "Oh, it's you. Hi." And Priscilla's like, "Oh, it's you? That's all you can say? That's the only thing you can say?" It's like, "Yeah, well, here's the thing. I kind of thought you would have been still underneath some human's knife, but clearly not. So whatever." So they have like a little discussion about like, "Oh, you stole my life." And it's like, "Oh, well, you stole my life because I was only a clone of you. How do you even know you're real?" Blah, blah, blah. They go back and forth. And so finally, Blackjack gets pissed off at it. He's like, "All right, here's the deal. I'm going to kill you now. Because before I was trying to take you in alive and I underestimated you. Now I'm overestimating you and I'm trying to kill you. So you're going to die." So they get into a short little fight. And Voodoo basically just straight up cuts off Blackjack's head. Like, just dead. And when she does so, because it wasn't here in the previous shot, she's wearing like this blue armor now. It's not all over her body, but just like Wonder Woman sort of armor. And she's like, "So here's the thing, guys. I got a promotion, and the new start of my mission is to kill all three of you. So 1 down, 2 to go." And Priscilla's a little bit freaked out that she just watched herself kill a man. So that's where that ends. I like it. I really do. I think it sets up an interesting new direction with the clone and the real one. I mean, Voodoo and Priscilla, like, literally just talking to, like, they're interacting. I thought for sure that would be something that would save more towards the end, but they're like, no, this is just how it's going to be right now. And Voodoo has a new mission, or at least a more well-defined mission. So yeah, it's a lot going on. And I'm liking pretty much every direction it's taking. This is pretty much the only book that is heavily focused on Daemonites that I actually like. Which, I don't know what that says. But it's a good book. So I'm giving it a 7. Art is also fantastic. The only reason I don't give it higher is because, again, it's a lot of talking and a lot of backstory and a lot of just justifications. It isn't so much in terms of actually doing things of intrigue. It's just a lot of like, no, the reason that we did this thing was because humans are special, blah, blah, blah. It's just justification and like moral whatevers. So that's the only reason it's low, but everything else about it is fantastic, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. Teen Titans number 7, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Brett Booth. Last issue, they fixed Kid Flash's powers, and then you got to read Superboy to even know what the hell's going on now. So I'm going to try to keep this brief because I genuinely don't think Scott Lobdell can focus on a scene for more than 4 pages. So Superboy's being tortured by the leaders of Nowhere because of the events of Superboy, and the narration says how he needs the Teen Titans. So Kid Flash comes in and redirects all these lasers that were aimed at him so that they're attacking the people in Nowhere. A guy named Center Hall, who's the director, he throws up a force field that stops Kid Flash. And then he's like, "Oh, you must be stupider than I thought to come back here alone." He's like, "Well, I'm not more stupider, and I'm not alone." So then Bunker and Skidder jump in, and they start fighting. But then Kid Flash remembers, like, "Man, how did we even get here?" And then we see how an hour ago, Red Robin and Kid Flash were training on the Brooklyn Bridge because they wanted to see whether or not Kid Flash's powers were like actually good or whatever. And so he just runs off at super speed, steals the plaque off the Statue of Liberty, then puts it back. And then all of a sudden, Danny the Street shows up. And for those of you who don't know, he made an appearance earlier on. Danny is a metahuman teenager who just happens to be a street that can like dimensionally teleport people. And he's a street. So Danny shows up and Bart is really freaked out about that, but then Red Robin's just like, Danny, my old compatriot, what news have you? Why did you come out from undercover? And he puts up signs of Superboy's logo, but they're all inverted, therefore signaling that he must be in distress. So then Red Robin calls a team meeting with the Teen Titans, and he's like, Superboy's being held captive in nowhere. Here's the best schematics Danny could get me. Who's in for saving him? And everyone's like, no. And he's like, well, Superboy is a teenager and nowhere is going to kill them, and it's our job to save all of them no matter who they are. If Superboy is killed, then nowhere will have won. Now, who's in? And they say, no. So then Red Robin's like, all right, well, that's a shame. I guess I'll be back soon, if I don't die or whatever. Bye, I guess. And he just walks out into Danny. And then immediately the team's like, fine, you freaking drama queen. And they all run out after him. But because they run out at different times, and Danny is weird, they're dropped in different locations in nowhere. So the fight's happening, but then as Kid Flash comes back into it, he can't hear anybody, and then he flashes into a flashback of his previous life before joining the Teen Titans, and he's like, what's going on? Why am I remembering that? Okay, anyway, moving on into the fight. And he goes around, he super speeds through everybody, grabs Superboy, and Superboy's like, are you serious? Are you saving me? He's like, yeah, no, I don't know why I'm doing it either. So the fight continues. We cut over to Wonder Girl, who Zaniel Templar, who again reads Superboy. He's like, I've been waiting to meet you, Miss Sandsmark. Have you ever met somebody whose entire inside is made of nothing but ravenous parasites? Yeah. So they fight for a little bit. Meanwhile, Red Robin is inside basically the computer room with Solstice, and he's downloading a bunch of files, and Solstice is like, hey, weren't we supposed to be freeing Superboy? And she's like, Solstice, how about you just like go help the team, and I'll be over soon, okay? Skedaddle. And she's like, excuse me? Bitch? How dare you? And so we cut back to the fight with Superboy and all them. And Kid Flash is like, hey, do you still have those telekinetic powers? Could you use them to maybe help? And he's like, yeah, but I only have enough for like maybe 2 seconds of a blast. And he's like, 2 seconds? That's forever for a Kid Flash. So Superboy sends out the telekinetic blast, and Kid Flash uses that to take out everybody else. Then we cut over back to Wonder Girl, who is fighting Zaniel, and Zaniel's like, why don't you tell me about those lariats that you use, Wonder Girl? And she's like, I told you not to call me Wonder Girl. I have nothing to do with her. And these lariats will consume the life essence of people if I let them. So she lets them consume the life essence of Zaniel, and he just dies. The end. So then Solstice is still pissed at Red Robin, and Red Robin's like, here's the deal. I'm downloading files on all the people who are being kept by Nowhere. I need to, find out who's in here. And she's like, what? You knew people were in here and you didn't come to save them? And he's like, I had suspicions, but I needed proof. And he's like, these are people, Red Robin. How could you? And he's like, I stand by what I did. I did not do anything wrong. Screw you. And so he just, walks out of the room as the computer's being destroyed, and Solstice is just so sad about it. So they all meet up at the rendezvous point. Superboy's a bit confused about Danny the Street as well, but whatever, they're there. And Red Robin shows up. I don't think Solstice makes it, but everyone else makes it there. And there's this foreboding voice who says, finally, after 10,000, the 8 of you all in one place. I could not have planned it better. Your powers, your bodies, mine to control. For it is I, the true founder of Nowhere. I am Harvest. Welcome to my colony. To be continued in the crossover event, The Culling, featuring the Teen Titans and Legion Lost. Okay. if you were only reading Teen Titans, this would be so confusing. Because, like, I read through these issues and I'm like, no, this doesn't make any goddamn sense. The only way it makes sense is if you're also reading Superboy, and now you also have to have a familiarity with Legion Lost as well, which is just a completely different corner of this. It's just, I mean, this book may as well have just been 7 issues of a crossover with Superboy already. So just to cross it over with another one, it's like, yeah, screw it, why not? So, what do I think of it? I think it's passable. It's serviceable. They needed Superboy and they needed to be back inside of nowhere so that they could start up the event. Like, they needed all that in the same place. And if this is how they wanted to do it, of a rescue mission, fine, whatever. It's functional. But I'm not going to say it's good. The best thing in this is them giving just a brief explanation of who Danny the Street is. Because that is so much more of an interesting character than anybody who's actually able to talk in these books. Because I am just sick of that. So, yeah, no. This is like a 4.5. I'll bump it to a 5. I'll bump it to a 5 because at least it's serviceable to get to where we need to be. Like, it's doing its job, but I don't have to like it. So, yeah. Look out for the culling. I don't even know if that starts next issue. I'm not looking forward to it. Legion, Secret Origin number 6, written by Paul Levitz, art by Chris Batista. Final issue of the miniseries. Last issue we left off with the Legion going into space and helping stop the wormhole thing, like the invasion that was coming through it. Meanwhile, the security directorate, Mycroft, was being possessed by some darkness, and it was going to kill R.J. Brand. Okay, this issue picks up with the Brand and all that, and Mycroft is narrating, just be like, I've always kind of wanted to kill Brand, like, for the sake of the United Planets. So I'm just gonna cause this to be like, it's gonna look like an assassin tried to do it, and none of his Legionnaires were there to save him. And then we'll fold the Legionnaires into the security directorate, and you will no longer have your private army, Brand. And no one will suspect me because I'll also be injured in the ensuing explosion. So farewell. And then he clicks a button that's supposedly a bomb. And then he looks over and it's like, oh God, no, that's not possible. As this itty-bitty little fly that was on Brand's shoulder transforms into Chameleon Lad, who's like, guess you didn't expect him to have 2 bodyguards, did ya? And he picks up the bomb, throws it away, and then starts going after Mycroft. Mycroft takes one of the drones that was carrying the unconscious Brand and just directs it in Chameleon Lad and starts firing at him. Then we cut over to Vrildox, or whatever his name is, and just Brainiac, and Phantom Girl, and he's like, Phantom Girl, you didn't tell me that your dimension also existed on a different plane of time. And she's like, I guess it didn't come up. I don't know. I'm not the scientist type. And then he just spouts off some mumbo jumbo saying like, yes, of course, with an asynchronous drive, something, I can do it. I can totally destroy it. And then they flip over to out in space where the Legion's being congratulated for helping defeat the wormhole and all the people through it. And they're basically all just patting themselves on the back, being like, we'll always be here to help, Admiral. The Legion has your back. And then they're like, but what happens if more of them come through? He's like, well, the Legion has your back. But then the Brainiac comes over the intercom being like, hey, by the way, I know how to destroy it. So, yeah, there's that. Cut back to Chameleon Lad. Apparently he just took out the drone in the ensuing pages, transformed into some weird squid monster, and is trying to attack Mycroft, get some answers out of why he's trying to kill Brand. And as he is investigating, he's like, you're kind of reminding me of that assassin that Saturn Girl said that she couldn't get any information from, which would make sense, but that means that they can also reach the security directorate, and that's an issue. I wonder, how do I keep Brand safe from that? Meanwhile, the darkness is literally right behind him. So then Brainiac explains his plan and says, like, here's the deal. If we take a time bubble and we rig it a certain way and we fly it into the wormhole, it'll explode through time as well as space, therefore closing the wormhole. I'm going to do it myself. and I probably won't die because of my personal shield, but, there is a chance. And so I don't even remember his name. The dude on the cover with the red and, like, the falcon on his chest, whoever that one is, ultra dude. So they stand off for a few seconds saying, like, oh, yeah, you're going to be the big guy saving the world, little man? And so then Phantom Girl jumps in the middle and be like, okay, boys, stop your fighting. Before you do this, I'd like to take the ship so I can go back home and say bye to everybody. So I'm just going to do that. And they're like, Phantom Girl, if you fly that ship in there, it's going to explode. She's like, don't worry about it. And she flies it over into the wormhole, and it explodes. So there was that. We cut back to Chameleon Lad, who's being attacked by the darkness, and the darkness justifies itself, saying, like, I wait at the end of time, even past the Legion, but I had to come back to now to stop RJ Brand from forming you, so that you won't interrupt my plan. So now I will kill him. Aye! And because they blew up the wormhole through time, somehow that also kills him, despite the fact he's on a planet completely separated from it. Regardless, wormhole closed, RJ Brand wakes up, and Chameleon Lad's like, I have no idea what happened, but you're safe, sir. So then the team up in space next to the wormhole is just like, well, there's a chance she made it through okay. But they're like, well, regardless, Brainiac, if you can just grow up and stop treating everything so scientifically, have a little bit of heart, you would be a real Legionnaire. And as they are saluting the sacrifice that Phantom Girl made, she pops back up and is just like, yeah, no, I totally survived. I just dumped the thing in the portal. I really like this place, and I'm glad I can hang around with you guys some more, because you're all my friends. So then some time passes, and apparently, like, Mycroft, Brand's not pressing any charges, but as long as they stop trying to take away his Legion, and everything's all hunky-dory, and the Legion's being honored with some big thing. They've got a whole bunch of new recruits all lined up. And they've also fixed the time bubble so you can travel through time. And they're like, we're going to totally recruit Superman. Like, that's number one. Let's go do that right now. Meanwhile, back in the security directorate, they're like, I sense that darkness. Yes, it disappeared, but it will come again one day. And I think I can make out a name. The Time Trapper. But regardless of when it comes back, the Legion will be there waiting. Long live the Legion. It's fine. It's okay. Like, I was super confused. Like, here's the thing. The Legion books have always been confusing to me because it's just a billion characters and they don't do anything to, like, properly set them up. This book at least took it slowly. It started with 3, and then it just, like, added one maybe every, like, 7 pages or so. But it did it slow enough that I, like, understood who they were and what their powers were for the most part. There were still some issues there. But it's just kind of an origin story, and a very, like, long-term one at that. This wasn't some big event that was like, this needs to get resolved now. It was a wormhole that just was slowly growing over time, and then when it got to be a big enough problem in issue 5, they dealt with it. Like, this was the least biggest threat possible. This was just the slow growth of the Legion, which is fine. I think that's a perfectly, if you're not going to introduce all the characters at once, that's a perfectly good way to do it. But because of that, it's not really an action-packed series. It's just kind of okay, here's how things happen, and we're slowly getting here, and we're doing it. So that by the time you hit the last issue, it's not really action-y at all. Issue 5 wrapped up the big fight. Issue 6 had the Time Trapper, but then he didn't even do anything. He just possessed the security directorate, said, I'm going to kill RJ Brand, and then disappeared. Okay? So, it's a fine miniseries. Do I think it's the best introduction to the other Legion books? Not really. A, because it took so long to get here. Like, I'm already 7 issues into the other books. And B, this doesn't really introduce too many people. It introduces probably a good, 10 or so. And even then, a lot of them don't get much focus. So, yeah, it's a overall as a series, I give it maybe a 6 on average. This particular issue, I give a 6 itself. So, long live the Legion, but I don't need it. And that's it. That's all the comics that came from DC Comics this March 28th, 2012. And you know, I really got to hand it to DC. It would have been so easy to start off the New 52 with some event involving like the Justice League and Justice League Dark. Hell, all the Justice Leagues could have crossed over in like issue 2, but no. They decided to wait over 6 months before a first little crossover in 2 books that frankly aren't even flagship titles, as much as I wish iVampire would be. So yeah, I will give it to them that they had restraint. Sure, throughout the entirety of almost every series, there have been character crossovers, and that's been as early as issue 2 with all the Bat family, but regardless, there's still a level of restraint. However, I must also condemn them because it took them this long to start canceling series as well, because coming next week, we get the first final issues of series that were originally billed as ongoings. So let's take a look at what we've got. April 4th, 2012 has the number 8 issues of Detective Comics, Batwing, Action Comics, Red Lanterns, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Men of War, OMAC, Stormwatch, Hawk and Dove, Static Shock, Animal Man, Swamp Thing, and the number 2 issue of the miniseries Night Force. But out of that, 4 different titles are being canceled, with Men of War, OMAC, Hawk and Dove, and Static Shock all having their last issue. Some of those I will be sad to see go, other of which I will be sad that it took this long. However, we will get there when we get there. Let me tell you, though, if you want to talk to me about any of the books we talked about this week, next week, the event crossover, how it's going in your life, how's that new pet, did the kids do well in school this week, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. That is at DC Comics Podcast, all one word. Use the hashtag New52. Or don't. I can only make this joke so many times in so many different ways. Additionally, we have a Patreon, Mild Fuzz TV. For as low as $1, you too can lose $1. And that's pretty much going to do it for me. I will see you next week. If you are subscribed, go ahead and hit that bell, smash that like button, rate 5 stars. What else is there? Yelp. Is Yelp still a thing? Find me on Yelp and then give me a thumbs up or whatever they do. I genuinely have never used Yelp. Anyway, try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.